What I've Become. Written by Night Breeze. Read by no one and nobody. Chapter 6. I was alone, running through the smothering darkness, hoping against hope that I would reach my destination unhindered. I needed to reach her, but I knew this wouldn't be the case as the hoofsteps behind me increased in volume, letting me know that my capture and death were only seconds behind me. Without warning, the hoofsteps stopped, only to be replaced by the sound of skittering insects. I doubled my speed, hoping that I could put some distance between myself and them. I didn't know what to call them. They haunted my dreams, filled me with a nameless dread so profound that it transcended terror and became something new entirely. Then everything changed. I was lying on some sort of hard metal surface. Above me was a plethora of metal arms, each holding a blade or needle of some kind. A face appeared in front of me, and I tried to ward it off, but my arms seemed to be missing. I tried to kick, only to find that they had taken those too. I heard voices somewhere, but what they said was beyond my understanding. I had to escape, but I knew that there was no way out. I watched in horror as one of those blades slowly made its way towards me, inching ever closer to my paralyzed eye. Then, without any warning, it lunged downwards, impaling my cornea on its cold metallic edge. As I screamed in pain and horror, I felt the world around me change again. I was in some sort of tank, floating in a viscous goo with something metal over my mouth and nose. They were there again, watching me while they took notes on their devices. I could see other tanks behind them, ones with humans in them, others with monsters, and some with something in between the two. I hammered at the tank walls, begging them to let me go, pleading with them to have some compassion. As one of them came closer, the world shifted once again, and I was alone in the darkness again. Or at least I thought I was alone. A sound behind me caused me to whip around, only to be confronted with a nightmare. It was similar to what they had turned me into, only far larger and more grotesque. Its claws dripped with a vile ichor, and its maw was open, eager to swallow me whole. I started to run, well aware of the ponderous footsteps behind me, coming closer with each passing second. "Please, someone, anybody!" I screamed as it finally caught me in its claws. I could hear it laughing, its monstrous voice tinged with insanity as it turned me in its huge hands to look me in the face. "Why are you doing this to me?" I shouted at it, hoping that I could stall it for a few seconds longer. It just looked at me, then continued to laugh.
"I'm not doing this, monster,"
it said. The world around me changed again. I looked around, trying to figure out where I was. I heard a voice somewhere close by, but I could not understand it. I looked down and noticed the mangled corpse that lay at my feet. I lifted my hands, only to see that they were no longer hands but claws. They were covered in blood. "Why would you make me do this? I'm not a monster!" I screamed in horror.
"You are now,"
I heard the beast say in my ear. I shook my head in disbelief and fell to my knees as the darkness started to close around me, despair kicking in, and I heard voices all around me. Ones I knew, others that I didn't. But they all said the same thing. "Monster! Monster! Monster! Enough. Murder! Evil beast! Thing! Enough. This is only the beginning, you know. You will continue to kill everything around you. You are our plaything now. Why don't we have some fun? Maybe have you kill everyone you know and love? Enough!" A bright light pierced the darkness behind me, silencing the voices that surrounded me. I turned towards the light, dreading what new terror was in store for me. I saw a moon, far larger and more beautiful than any moon I had ever seen. As I watched, the moon started to move closer. Its light filled me with a feeling that I didn't have a name for. It was an alien feeling, but it was one that I was sure I had felt before. As the moon got closer, I was finally able to place a name to the glorious feeling. Peace. Slowly, a shadow formed on the face of the moon, its figure distinctly equine in shape. It got closer, leaving the moon behind to stand next to me. As it got closer, the shadows fell away from around it to reveal something familiar, yet alien. She was a pony, but far more regal and graceful than any I had seen before. If you included the horn, she was almost as tall as I was, standing nearly at 5.5 feet. Her midnight blue coat and wings seemed to glow with some unearthly light, while her ethereal star-field mane and tail fluttered and waved in a wind that I could not feel. On her flank I could make out a dark blotch, upon which a crescent moon hung, suspended as if in the night sky. Her hooves were shod in silver, while at her neck was some kind of black jewelry, with a silver moon which was identical to the one on her flank. On her head I could see she wore a tiara, made from the same black material, and on her face I could see a look of profound sadness. "Who are you?" I asked, strangely unafraid of this new arrival. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she just looked at me, her teal eyes filled with compassion and sorrow, as the world around us changed once again. This time I was at home, in my bed. I felt safe as my comforter was pulled up around my neck. "Shh," I heard a female voice say nearby. "There will be time for that later. For now, sleep. Sleep the sleep of the dreamless, and finally, rest from your cares. Take comfort in knowing that you are safe now." Her voice had a strange musical quality to it. I could also tell that she wasn't speaking in my language, but somehow I could understand the meaning behind those words. How the heck does that work? I thought to myself as my eyes got heavier. I could hear her nearby, her voice humming softly as my mind started to slip off. Before I knew it, I had fallen to a deep, dreamless sleep. "It's experiencing extreme hypothermia, but I think we managed to catch it in time before its heart failed," Sergeant Fairweather said as he saluted smartly. "Him." "What?" "The creature. It is a him, not an it. He is a living, thinking, sapient individual that has experienced far too many horrors for one so young as he." Luna reprimanded the guard sadly. "Yes, Your Highness," Sergeant Fairweather said with a bow of his head. "Did you get a name, Your Highness?" Captain Seeker asked. "Not yet. He has been through so much, has seen so many horrors, that I thought it better to let him sleep peacefully tonight." Princess Luna answered, her voice filled with compassion. "Did you find out what he is, though? Or why he was so dead set on avoiding capture that he'd risk his own life?" Captain Seeker asked, as he sat down by the shivering biped. "Yes and yes. Some things I must speak with my sister about first, but I will tell you this much. His form is not his own. He was turned into this shape by creatures of unfathomable cruelty, forced to do a great many horrors in their name, only to finally awaken and see the horror that he had become," Princess Luna said, shivering a little as she spoke. "He is not a monster, but he sees himself as one, and he fled from us because he assumed that we would treat him as nothing but. He thought that any encounter with ponies would result in his death and dissection, so he made it a point to avoid all contact with us." Captain Seeker nodded in understanding at this, compassion in his eyes. "How long has he been alone?" 6 months. Captain Seeker blanched at this, his eyes filled with worry. "I'm surprised he hasn't gone mad at this point." "He is incredibly strong-willed, this much is true," Princess Luna said as she sat down on the cool grass that lined the riverbed. "So, what do we do with him? Take him back to Canterlot?" Sergeant Fairweather asked a little awkwardly. Princess Luna thought about this for a few seconds, then shook her head. "He doesn't trust us, nor can I blame him after the horrors that he has gone through. It would be unwise to take him back to Canterlot directly, so instead we shall take him back to his cave. We shall come back later with my sister to attempt to communicate once more with him, but for now he should be fine if left to his own devices." A couple of the younger guards looked uneasy about that, but they did not say anything. Captain Seeker saluted, however, then stopped as a thought struck him. "Princess, I think I understand what you meant earlier when you said he was trying to survive." His bare skin seems very susceptible to the cold, and I doubt that he would survive for very long if the weather were to turn foul. I think it would be prudent if we left a few things with him when we go to drop him off, as well as some form of note, letting him know that we will be back in a few days."
Luna nodded in agreement as she stood up from where she was sitting. "He has had a rough time of things. Let's see if we can improve the quality of his life a little."
I woke with a start, my head pounding and my limbs exhausted. "Why am I still alive?" I thought as I sat up from where I was lying. I nearly jumped out of my skin, though, when a nice thick blanket slid off me as I became upright. I looked down in confusion, noting the patchwork pattern on the cloth in utter disbelief. What?" I thought intelligently as I stared down at the impossible cloth. My sense of smell, tired of being ignored for so long, burst down the door of my consciousness and slapped a status report on my brain's desk. My brain took a good, long look at it before finally handing it over to me in confusion. I smelled fish fillet. Not just any fillet, either. This was a salmon, rubbed down with a mixture of salt and rosemary, then fried gently over a slow flame. I turned my head towards the heavenly scent, only to see something that I refused to believe. I got up and went over to the entrance of my cave, just to make sure that it really was my cave. Yep, there's a tree, and a ladder? I thought in disbelief. There, standing against the cliff face, was a 15-foot ladder. I could tell right off the bat that it would allow me easier access to my lair. Was still confused as to why it was there in the first place. I looked back inside the cave, my mind reeling with confusion. There, sitting over the fire pit, was a professional-looking cooking spit and grill. Next to the fire pit, I could see a wide assortment of cooking utensils, pots, pans, and spices. More importantly, however, was the fish fillet that sat on a metal plate next to the fire. It was a simple meal, sure, but as I picked it up, along with the silverware that sat on the mat next to it, I felt that it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. As I picked up my new plate, I noticed a note that had been placed underneath it. It showed a picture of a sun, a moon, then a sun, as well as 2 winged unicorns, and a rough caricature of myself. Our arms were raised, and it appeared that I was shaking the hoof of the largest one. A drop of water suddenly landed on the page, and I looked up, confused about where it came from. When I couldn't see anything, I looked back down at the page, then carefully put it down. Think about that later, I thought as I brought my attention back to the fish in my lap. I gently cut into it with the provided knife, then took a bite, taking special care not to shear through the metal fork with my razor-sharp fangs. As the flavor exploded in my mouth, I broke down completely, weeping at the kindness that I was shown. Give that freaking tree a medal. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes everyone really is out to get you. Sometimes the whole world is trying to stomp you into the dirt, trying its best to kill you, trying to break you, turn you into something not worth saving. Sometimes you're wrong. If you're enjoying this reading, consider checking out the non-copyright infringement version available on Amazon Prime. See link in video details for more information.